Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it is time to have a look at a dev Q&A, and I've got to say this time they did answer a lot of questions which have been hot button topics over the last at least few months when it comes to the War Thunder community. So once again we have Vyacheslav Bulanikov back, who is of course BVVD, the man, the myth, the legend, and he is here to answer some of our questions. So the first question is, with the introduction of medium range missiles as well as increasingly fast top-tier aircraft, how now and in the future, maps in top-tier aerialistic battles are becoming increasingly cramped. Are there any plans to mitigate this going forward? The answer is yes. We have already increased the battle area in the high ranks, and if necessary, we will do it again in the future. If you didn't know, when it came to the last two updates, what they've actually done is they've made it so each map, depending on the rank that it is, or depending on what BR it is, the airfields are so far apart from each other, therefore making them uniform, therefore making it so if you are at a higher BR, then you will have a larger map compared to a lower BR, where you will have a smaller map. It's pretty much makes sense, because as you go up the ranks, you know, the vehicles get exponentially faster, if you compare like a rank 1 to a rank 6, and generally, with this as the case, I think it's been a positive change. Whether it's the complete full change that needs to be required for these large battles is, or high tier battles, is obviously up for debate. And since they've changed a lot of maps in the last two major updates for aerialistic, we'll have to see if that is good enough or if they will do more in this form. Obviously, as a person who doesn't play too much high tier jet battles, it's hard for me to tell if, you know, the battle ranks are high enough or not. I have played a decent amount of 8.0 to 9.0 though, and I would say at least at that BR, the general size of the map is completely fine. The next question is, both the Jaguar GR1 and the Jaguar A were capable of mounting flares. In game, currently neither variant has them, yet they are ranked with the high-end jets that do have them. Do you have plans to introduce them for these aircraft to better assist them? And the answer is, we're working on adding the flares for aircraft that had them, including the Jaguar A and the Jaguar GR1, and additional suspended containers with flares. We always try to realize the maximum potential of the vehicles in the game, but some details require additional research. Jaguar A and Jaguar GR1, and additional suspended containers with flares. So it looks like they are going to get them. I love it how the Q5 is not mentioned here. For some reason, people are just focusing on the Jaguars, maybe because they're semi-usable. Rip my Q5. Hopefully that goes down in BR soon. But the general thing when it comes to the Jaguars is, yes, they will get their flares. And it's nice to see that vehicles will get, you know, their overall, I suppose, suspended sets that they should have. The only question is, I suppose the only question is, from at least my point of view, is why would they not add it with these things? You know, why would we have a situation where vehicles, especially with mechanics already existing in the game, why would they not have access to these things on the get-go? So therefore, any of the data which is collected on these machines can be used to actually effectively balance them. Because if we have a situation right now where if they are doing poorly because of the fact that they don't have flares, then they're going to go down in BR, or they're going to go down in repair costs. But the moment they get those flares, if it's a large enough change, then they're not going to be balanced again. So therefore they have to go back up, but we have to wait 3 months or, you know, 4 months, depending on the time period, for the relevant statistics to be taken in, and then go so on and so forth when it comes to this stuff. So yeah, it's kind of annoying that vehicles don't come in at their fullest potential, especially with pre-existing mechanics that exist, because then it just means that they can be a bit of a balancing nightmare over time. There's been a few vehicles that have this has happened to. I don't think flares will massively change how these vehicles are played, but we shall see going forward. The next question is it possible to load the IL-28SH at the same time with bombs and with missiles, or use other variants of mixed load. Some of such combinations will fit perfectly into the load carrying capacity, which is less than 3,000 kilos. The example, 1.5 T missile, 1.5 tons of missiles plus 1.5 tons of bombs will make 3-ton load. The maximum isn't exceeded. The weapon control elements are different. So why not? The answer is, we are trying to add a large number of suspended weaponry combinations where it was technically possible. We will consider this option and don't exclude its addition in one of the next updates. Follow the news and leave your suggestions on the forum in the appropriate sections. So yeah, they have this whole new system now where you have a bunch of different weapon combinations, and there's no reason why they can't add to it, you know. I know a lot of people have asked for the idea of being able to fully customize your loadouts. I feel personally that that would be a hell of a like compared to what we have now, where you could actually balance the loadouts. So if, let's say, one loadout was overperforming, you would be able to remove it, or you'd be able to change it. When it comes to customizable loadouts, you wouldn't be able to do that. What people would do is they'd just find where the limit is on the load carrying capacity and then just use the optimal loadouts. That's all that would happen in those scenarios, especially with these higher tier machines. But it would be nice to get some more stuff with the IL-28SH. A bit of bombs and a bit of rockets would be lovely. So hopefully at some point we do get more options for machines, as long as they're balanced, and hopefully it does go well in that regard. The next set of stuff is obviously for ground forces. And they do answer a decent amount of stuff here, which, you know, a lot of people have been asking for. So the first question is, are there any reasons why there is not a permanent tank-only mode? And the answer is, one of the main features of War Thunder is the ability to combine in one single battle different vehicle types, and we find this mode more interesting than just a single ground battle mode. Additionally, the game also has a lot of modes, so adding another type of ground mode on a permanent basis makes no sense from our point of view. Yeah, the argument of splitting the player base, the argument of, you know, longer queue times, the argument of, you know, why should this, you know, mode just be only individual vehicles? It would be like asking for a naval-only mode without planes. And generally, I agree with them. When it comes to War Thunder, the whole point of War Thunder is variety. It's about lineups. It's not about an individual vehicle that you are running. It's all about using different tools in your arsenal to be able to win the battle. And one of the great places where this happens is ground realistic, where, you know, you can do pretty well in a tank, and then you can get in a plane. You can try and dominate from the air, whether it's from a superiority point of view or whether it's from, you know, a ground pounding point of view, and try and turn the, you know, the tide of battle. In a tank-only mode, these don't exist. First of all, SPAAs no longer will be used because there's no use in them. Then there are a bunch of other vehicles which also wouldn't be used, which already hardly get used, such as a lot of tank destroyers. So it would literally just be like mediums and heavies versus each other, maybe a few lights scattered in. And I actually had a great example of what a tank-only mode would look like, because when you don't have mechanics to dig people out of holes, and you have to trade to be able to try and get them out of the holes, and it's an unfavorable trade, what generally happens is, because you don't have the coordination as a team, you know, pushing forward, it's really, really hard to be able to do anything. A great example was, I was streaming on Twitch a few days ago, and we were on Port Novorossiysk, and we were at pretty decently high tier, you know, I believe we were at around like 9.7, 9.3, and I was just sat there, you know, with the what was I sat there with? I can't remember the vehicle that I was sat there with, but I had thermals, and I was just chilling there, and I was sat on the south spawn, and you know that dreaded center point, which is in the middle of the field. So we had our guys sat on one side of the field, and then they had their guys sat on the other side of the field, and they were sat on their set of walls, and we were sat in the roads, and it was just everybody trying to artillery the other one. And that's all you can do, because the moment you pop out, you die, so you can't do that. The moments that you try and move... Oh, I was playing the ZTZ96, that's what I was playing, so 9-3. And if you try and go around the side, from the south side, all they need is just one person on that set of walls, and you die. If you try and go out the roads, you will get shot in the side and die, or shot from the northeast. And then from the other side, if you try and push Bravo from the houses which are sat there, then you will just get shot in the side. Or if you go down the road, then, as I said, there'll be just a guy watching the cross and you'll die. So we sat there for 20 minutes not doing anything. Both sides just trying their best to artillery each other and hope for the best. There was 5 tanks or 6 tanks sat on our side. There was 5 or 6 tanks sat on their side. Makavas and Type 74s, as I said, ZTZ-96, a bunch of Soviet stuff. And we just sat there because you cannot push without some kind of relief from either CAS or a random artillery shell hitting something, or, or a push from a confident person who catches people out when he basically, or she basically, just gets lucky going around the place. Now, if you have a coordinated effort, now let's say you have like a 3-man or a 4-man, you could easily push into either sectors, trade 1-for-1 with one person, and then burst through hard. But if you're playing as an individual, like I was doing there, and there was no squad play at all, you ain't going anywhere. You're not doing anything, and so we just got stuck there. And there was nothing any side could do about it, because nobody would be able to trade efficiently, because everybody who went out there just died. And, the counter to this, as always, is, well, you could just smoke and, push forward. If you do that, if you smoke and push forward, you lose. One of the great things about smoke, and one of the bad things about smoke, is if you use it, guess what? You can't see what the enemy's doing, while they can't see what you're doing too. It's a double-edged sword. So if, let's say, you smoke the area to shoot, or you smoke the area to be able to get across, you get across into Bravo, but then the enemy can reposition behind you, and then they can just annihilate you. It's one of those double-edged swords which doesn't work in a lot of situations, and in that situation it wouldn't have worked, because the moment one side smoked the other, that just meant that one side would just push forward and just go ballistic through a point, or if they stood still, then they would just lose, and the stalemate would still be there. It would be exactly the same as it was before. So yeah, the problem with the tank only game mode from that example is War Thunder is an inherently defensive game when it comes to the ground. If you just set up sectors where you overwatch after capturing the points and just wait for people to walk in and just set up crossfires in a decent way, then you will win the battle. It's as simple as that. It's on the aggressive team to inherently do something, to try and change the course of the battle. So therefore, the first spawn and having fast vehicles is incredibly useful to be able to try and marshal that first spawn. And with the fact that the game is inherently defensive, or gives basically a bonus to people who play defensive, especially if they're coordinated, it means that you'll just have a stalemate a lot of the times. And I know a lot of people are like, well, just try it. Well, yeah, sure, why not? Have an event. Have an event for a week, or have an event for a weekend, and just see how it goes. But that is not what's being asked for here. As you can see by the answer, the permanent idea has been asked for. If you want to do an event, sure, let's do an event, see how it is, and, have a go at it. The next question is, sometimes players are entered into night battles without having NVDs unlocked. These players cannot compete with players that already possess thermal vision or IR devices. Are there any plans to limit night battles for players with vehicles that do not have NVDs unlocked? The answer is there are no such plans, but we reconfigure the weather conditions and daytimes so that night battles were always in good weather conditions and with moonlight. In addition, we don't exclude the further implementation of lighting shells and mines. Lighting shells and mines will not solve this issue. So, as a person who has been grinding a lot of 9.7s and a lot of 9.3s over what seems like the last month or two to try and basically just research that area, because I keep getting told that 9.7 and 10.0s are in a terrible spot because they always get up tier to 10.7 and they always get battered, and well, that's just not what I found at all. But the main thing is, I have gone through a lot of situations where I've had full lineups. You know, when I was playing my T72 B and my B1989 and my T64B, you know, the full 9.7 lineup, I didn't have NVDs on anything, and I kept getting night battles. We actually have a thing on the stream now where if I get 3 night battles in a row, I just end the stream. I just turn it off, because it is so infuriating to play when you know that the enemy team or elements of your team can see and you can't. I would actually advocate for the complete removal of night battles. I have never experienced something as infuriating in War Thunder, and I'm a person who has nearly spaded the Type 60 ATM. The fact is, and spaded the Type 75 SPH, by the way, but the problem is when you give an ability for one side to be able to see and the other side to not, it gives a massively inherently bad gameplay like feeling. Put it like this, right? Imagine if in any game, in any other game, League of Legends, Dota, you know, World of Tanks, Armor, if you want to go that far, or even something like, I don't know, Hell Let Loose, Squad, anything like that. Imagine if you just randomly spawned in and you couldn't see anything, but there were people around you who could. So in Dota, let's say your line of sight is only just next to your character, so you can hardly see anything. Same with League of Legends. In World of Tanks, if it was just dark and you were just screwed. I really, really detest night battles. I think they are inherently negative to the game. I think they're literally only there because of the fact that, you know, there are a lot of MBTs which seem to have pretty bad win rates during day battles. So in night battles they can make it back up, and also because there's a bunch of premiums at high tiers as well, which also have thermals. So therefore, if you don't have thermals, or if you don't have night vision on your standard tech tree stuff, don't worry. You can just buy a premium which has them, so therefore you'll be able to actually see and participate in the battle. I think it's completely ridiculous that night battles are a thing, and the idea that making it so good weather conditions and with moonlight, you know, has fixed the issue. No, it has not at all. There is a night battle that I had in the STRF 9056, and luckily that thing has commander thermals and gunner sight thermals, but with those turned off, I couldn't see a thing. And the problem is, I already have bad eyesight, right? My eyesight ain't great. So now you're forcing me into a position where I can't see. And it is definitely a negative factor when it comes to me for playing high-tier machines. It makes me not want to play certain machines, especially if they do not have access to thermals. So yeah, even though night battles in general, they don't happen too often, and you can, you know, maybe about 5 or 10% of the time you're going to run into them, I think it is criminal to even have them in the game. And the reason for this is because just as I said, just try and apply this to any other game in history. Just say to a person, right, 5 or 10% of the time when you load into the game, you will not be able to see. Like, what are they going to say to that? And also, the fact is, you can just get around them anyway by screwing with your graphics card settings when it comes to your general color correction, and also your general exposure and your contrast of what you're seeing. You can literally just set filters to be able to remove night battles, and this is still in the game. You can do it through NVIDIA, you know, settings or NVIDIA filters while you're playing the game, and a ton of people do this. So therefore, you still have people who can see because they've just flipped it today again, and you have others who cannot see. So you either have to remove the aspect of being able to use NVIDIA filters in the game, or you just have people just basically cheat with them because they can see and you can't. And remember, if people are on lower end machines, they don't get that option. They cannot be able to do that. So absolutely wonderful. It's a wonderful situation. Just remove them. The next question is Swedish top MBTs and top tier vehicles in general have a really high repair cost, significantly higher than any other nation. This puts people off of researching and playing these vehicles, as even a 4+ kill game, a single death will outweigh the cost of your rewards. Do you have any plans to review these costs and better balance them so tank vehicles don't receive repair costs in excess of 25k SL Lions? The answer is there are no artificial restrictions on the repair price. It depends on the vehicle efficiency. Repair costs will be constantly updated on the basis of statistics, but we also plan to make some changes in the algorithm for calculation of repair costs, which will lead to the price decrease for some vehicles, for example, the STR-V122. And I will say, the STR-V122 did go down yesterday in repair costs, so it's not in excess of 25k SL anymore, and the argument stands. It's as simple as that. The STR-V122 is the best top tier MBT. It's insanely good. It's just like back in the day when people were complaining about the Abrams win rate when it had an 80%, Abrams repair cost when the thing had an 80% win rate. It was running over teams. It's as simple as that. And even though a lot of people are saying nowadays these Soviet vehicles are running over teams, I was able to spade my challenges during the time of the supposed Soviet, massive annihilation of everything, and also the IPM-1 and the M1 Abrams as well. I have a positive win rate in all of them. I have a positive KD in all of them. Also the Ariete P, I do have a negative win rate, but once again, positive KD. And then also just other vehicles I've been able to spade alongside. So the idea of this Soviet dominance at top tier, even though they can be difficult to fight, especially with stock vehicles, they aren't, unkillable. They aren't, in my opinion, taking over the game. The STR-V122 is still the strongest tank in this game. It has got ridiculous armor on it. It has great mobility. It has a good enough round in the form of the DM33, and it has access to all of the bells and whistles you would want to. And at the same time, it does have a really good, let's say, call it battle efficiency. Every time I see one in the game, they always do well. And the reason is because they play pretty good, and they're allowed to because of the fact that they have such good armor, and the fact that they have a great reload, the fact that they have pretty much everything that you would require. It is not a surprise to me that the STR-V122 is the most expensive vehicle to repair in the game. The other thing is, when you look at Swedish top tier, this is just not the case when it comes to its repair costs. If you have a look at the STRF 9056 or the LVKV at 97, they are very, very cheap machines. They are incredibly cheap machines to run. I've been making SL through the wazoo with them the last few days. I think they're like 5k or 6k a piece compared to pretty much everything. When people talk about, the high cost of the Swedish, they're literally only talking about the STR-V122. Everything else has a relatively decent price, which you can easily make. But it is not a surprise to me that the best tank in the game is expensive to run. It is an incredibly efficient machine. It is incredibly good at what it does. And as we've talked about, if the statistics show that players are doing insane in a machine, the repair cost is not going to go down. If you want a great example of this, the B29. The B29 repair cost actually did go down the last few days, but the point still stands because it's still ridiculously high. And then if you want another example, the Grief, the HE177 went up again. You do realize that people aren't dying in these machines. That's why their repair costs are going through the roof. It's not the fact that they're making 50, 60, 100k a battle flying them and then dying. It is the fact that they are just not dying in the games. Because they just climb to a ridiculous altitude and they're able to drop their bombs and then just swim around the place, wait for the battle to be over, especially with these new aerialistic changes where a lot of battles, if left alone when it comes to the AI, they can be over in about 15 to 20 minutes. What is happening is they're just staying out of the battle and being able to, just not die. We were doing the base bombing decal for the Americans, and I actually took the B-29 into arcade because it seems like the easiest place to do it. In 6 battles that we did to get the 30 tons done, or it might have been 5 battles, I died once during them. And it's literally, I just climbed. That's all you have to do. It's a pretty simple plan, and and it works every time. And in Aerialistic, what you do is you just turn to a 90 degree, and you just pitch it in a 5 to 10 degree climb, and you just go to space, and then you just don't die. And a lot of people see this as passive play. A lot of people see it as, against the game's rules, and that's fair, but at the same time, it's how you don't die. The STRV-122 is exactly the same. You play it defensively, you play it passively, anything that comes near you, you absolutely annihilate, and with your crazy survivability, with your crazy gun, and also reload, you just pick off targets as you go. Every time I've seen one in-game, it's done really well. They are very strong machines, and I can't wait to try it to see if I can go positive in it when it comes to its repair costs. Because I've got a feeling that I can, because there hasn't been many machines in game that I've struggled with when it comes to repair cost. Even with stuff like the A6M5 Otsu or the standard A6M5, whichever one it was, when that thing's repair cost was 35k, over 10 battles I still made a profit of 250,000 SL. And it's because you simply don't die. And that is the problem with repair costs. It's not the fact that they're so high, it's the fact that people don't die no matter how large the repair cost is. The next question is, in top tier battles, it's quite common to see a lot of small variants of some maps very often. Is it possible you can distinguish and separate these maps out, so that low tier vehicles can see the smaller variants, whilst modern top tier vehicles have the larger and more spacious maps? Top tier gameplay is not well suited to these maps. The answer is statistics of the bans and dislikes show that this isn't the case. At the top rank players like both big and also compact maps, and compact maps even more. So one of the interesting things that I personally do is I don't use the map rotation filter. I don't have any likes and dislikes on it. I don't have any bans on it. And the reason for this is to try and use myself as kind of a control to see what maps that I generally play at the various tiers that I see, to try and get a grasp, at least a very small one, on what generally people are picking to be able to be played. And I've got to say, after playing a lot of 9.7, a lot of 10.0, I'm getting on a lot of small maps. And you've got to remember, every map is available at every tier in the game. So therefore, it must be the people who are loading into these things, they must be the ones picking these maps because of their use of the map rotation filter. It is completely player controlled now. Completely player controlled, completely community controlled, if you want to put it like that, in order for, you to see specific maps. And what I'm seeing the vast majority of the time are very small maps. Stuff like Karelia, Ash River, the small version of Sinai I see quite a lot. And also other stuff such as Mozdok. And it just shows me that what's been banned by the majority of people are the large maps. So this idea that top tier needs these more spacious maps, they need large maps to be able to move around the place and do all these crazy things, well, the people who are actually playing top tier, the majority of them, they don't seem to be picking the larger maps. They don't seem to be picking, the Vietnams. They don't seem to be picking, stuff like Maginot Line. Instead, what they're doing is they're just picking mainly the smaller maps. So what do we do with that information? Well, I know exactly what Gaijin are going to do. They're going to make more maps like that. They're going to make more maps which are similar to cargo ports and stuff like that, because it seems like it's what people want. And can you blame them at the end of the day? And by the way, I am a large map advocate. I would love to see larger maps overall, but at the same time, all you have to do is just look at it. What gets you to the action quicker? What means that you can have a blast? What means that you can get your SL and RP quicker? Is it going to be a small map, or is it going to be a large map? it's going to be a small map, and therefore there are more brawls, there is more action, there is more stuff going on, and there is more stuff that you can interact with. Of course, people are going to like that more, it's kind of as simple as that. And the idea that modern top-tier vehicles have the larger, more spacious maps, the idea that they fit these more. Once again, I will bring you an example. The SDRF 9056. This is a 9.7 vehicle. It gets up-tiered a lot into 10.7, because a lot of people play 10.7. But because of quantitative matchmaking, it's not too bad. You only end up facing about 25% of the enemy team being 10.7s. So it's not a huge deal, and it also has some pretty cool mechanics with the Bill, missile launcher, the missile, I should say, which is a top-down ATGM. It's a pretty fun, machine overall. But the point I'm trying to bring out is, this missile, which is my only way of engaging at long ranges, because my gun is completely useless at those long ranges, disappears after 2.2 kilometers. I cannot shoot across Sands of Sinai and hit things. My missiles explode before they get there. So what do I do with a machine like that on a large map? Do I just not take it? Well, at 9.7, it's either that or an LVKV, which is it, but an AA version with no missile. So I don't actually have a choice of a vehicle which can shoot that far if I play that BR. If I go up to 10.0, you have the SGR V121. That fixes the issue. But the main thing is there are vehicles at top tier which are also modern. The 9056 is one of the most modern vehicles in the game, and they don't fit these large maps. Using these large statements about, what fits what, and we need this because this, they're really, really, really bad. And it's because all you have to do is you have to point out a few examples where it isn't the case, and then boom, the whole thing falls apart. The next question is, in the past, top-ranked MBTs were balanced around shooting weak spots. There's a lot of other reasons they were balanced by. With the introduction of volumetric projectiles, shooting weak spots has become more inconsistent. This benefits certain vehicles more than others. Are any additional algorithms to the volumetric calculations planned to make the system more predictable? And the answer is, as we know, in the top rank, the main type of shell is the APFSDS. The core caliber of such shells is usually much smaller than that of the cannon and is 20 to 40 millimeters. In this case, the implementation of the shell size mechanics for calculations for the penetrations has had an effect on reducing the number of vulnerable zones much less than for tanks in other ranks. In addition, in a recent server update, we fixed some issues with armor penetration at large angles, which was relevant for the top kinetic shells. We also have plans and are working on the fixing and improving these mechanics. Yeah, I don't think this is a top tier issue, mainly because of how small the darts are. I think the main issue you have at top tier is the overlapping armor bug that we've talked about before. So basically, if you have two plates of armor and you have if you hit between those 2 points, where those 2 points connect, for some reason the calculation takes into account both of those points of armor. So if you have 100 millimeters and that meets a 300 millimeter plate, if you shoot the center of that, it counts as 400 millimeters. So you end up with a lot of these very dodgy bounces, especially on the side of vehicles where your shot should definitely go through, but it doesn't. That needs to be fixed. I don't think the APFSDS at top tier, having the volumetric change has actually changed too much, apart from that bit right there. I would definitely say after playing stuff like rank 2, 3, and 4, there are a lot more machines which have some much more dodgy sets of armor when it comes to the volumetric changes. So those, in my opinion, should be addressed first. Those are definitely major issues when it comes to the game. I remember spading the Chihar LG and bouncing off stuff like the Panzer III's turret and stuff like that. It just shouldn't be happening like that, and it's all based on because the shell is large and it keeps getting caught on many different armor angles. So hopefully they do refine it. And also, as I said before this mechanic came out, it's a really cool mechanic. It makes the game more realistic. It's a positive mechanic, but it's going to be absolute hell the first month that it's out, because after this we're going to have a lot of restructuring of BRs, because this will fundamentally change the game. We still haven't had those restructurings yet. We also haven't had the full implementation of the mechanic without the bugs, so we'll see what happens when that actually does happen. The next question is from the Miscellaneous section. Mines are a really interesting addition, but they don't last very long, and this limits their tactical use. Do you have plans to review mines' active times in the future? The answer is yes. We do have such plans. Okay, well, there you go. There's nothing else to really say about that one. I would have asked a question about, is there any more plans of adding airdrop mines from any other country apart from America? So therefore we can get some pretty cool, mines for other nations. That would be nice to see. Hopefully at some point that is the case. And then the next question is, can you tell us the status of Mac and Linux development for the game? More recently, there has been more and more bugs and less overall fixes for these platforms. Can you tell us anything about Vulkan, and if support will be introduced for War Thunder? The answer is this isn't true. The number of bugs on these platforms hasn't increased. We fairly quickly release client fixes. Also, Metal has recently become available for Mac users, for which we have more positive feedback. Yes, there are some bugs there, but we are fixing it, and in this case, it is possible to use OpenGL Parallel. The Linux platform is complex itself because of different distributions, builds, and drivers, but we're also doing our best here. So, yeah, they're working on it. I think it's probably the best way to put it, which isn't really a surprise that they would say something like that. So, yeah, if there is some quite large bugs on the platforms, make sure to bug report them so they can fix them as soon as possible. But that is the overall Q&A. They've answered a lot of questions that a lot of people have been asking. I think we had a bit of a dud dev Q&A last time, but this one really hits a lot of good notes, and it's nice to see that they are answering what are seen as the tough questions in the game. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Trigger Hippie, Universe, Conte Baraka, Elove Goat, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Hans, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.